One key process of aging is excessive oxidative stress. When you track down where oxidative stress comes from, you go to the mitochondria. Researchers have been looking to find a way to fix the mitochondria for years. It's hard to measure mitochondrial function, and it's even harder to prove that you are fixing it. I can tell you that if this GlyNAC proves that it is improving mitochondrial function, it can have a significant role in the efforts to reverse aging. So, is GlyNAC the supplement that's going to solve aging? Well, that is what we're going to find out today. Stay with us, because today we're going to discuss details regarding the latest research on this popular supplement. It's growing fast, GlyNAC. When we discuss aging, now we're going to be talking about some key concepts like oxidative stress, mitochondrial function, and hallmarks of aging. But don't worry, we're going to make it as digestible as possible. So at the end of the video, you'll have the information you need to understand the role of supplements like GlyNAC in improving, or as you see in the title, even reversing aging. At the end, we'll have our traditional Q&A session. So let's take a look at the evidence.
Hey, Dr. Brewer, I really appreciate you sticking up with the time so we can go right in and dive into the topic, and we can go to the Q&A quicker.
In other words, me not talking too long.
I know people love your bunny holes, but let me tell you, sometimes keeping you on track, it's hard. But I mean, you guys in the comments, let us know what you like the most. Do you like Dr. Brewer going into the bunny holes, or do you prefer him reading a script and then moving on? Let me add Jeannie to the stage. It might be a little bit too crowded, but that's okay for now. Hi, Jeannie. How are you doing?
Very good, Jesus. Good to be here.
Glad. So Jeannie's going to help us stay on track too. And so we can, instead of be talking a lot of scientific geeky terms, just keep it down to earth, simple as possible. So if you're following the channel, you might realize so far, yesterday we published a short where Dr. Brewer explains oxidative stress. And we wanted to go through that before we move on into aging and GlyNAC specifically, just so you have kind of a perspective of what we are talking about. Let me give it a shot to try to explain oxidative stress for you. So when you're thinking about your cell, there's a chemical process called oxidation. And that oxidation process is basically when you are using glucose and oxygen to create energy. However, the problem is that when you have too much glucose going around, or you have a dysfunctional cell, specifically the mitochondria, as if you remember from your high school classes, is the power, how do you call that? The power
plant, or the furnace of the cell.
There's a keyword that everybody uses for that, but it's basically where the energy comes from. When you have your mitochondria working overtime and overloaded, you start building something that is called free radicals, and those free radicals are just going around grabbing electrons from other structures in your cell, and that basically when you pull electrons out of the walls of the cell or other structures on the cell, you're going to start damaging that. And that's what you see here on this image right here. There's a normal cell that is creating too much free radicals, and those free radicals are basically burning and damaging this cell itself, creating damage that ends up with cell death at the end. And when you are killing your cells that fast and not having enough time to build new cells into your body, that's basically aging. And we are going through that process, and this gets accelerated after 25 years old or when you're in your 30s. And that's just the way it is. The cells become less and less efficient. Now, if you have heard about antioxidants, and basically antioxidants, what they do is decrease that phenomenon of oxidation, oxidative stress, and all that stuff. And what happens with the antioxidants is that they are basically scavengers that are going to be trying to eat those free radicals, avoiding that those free radicals still be trying to take electrons from other structures and become kind of a buffer so this doesn't happen. GlyNAC does something similar to this, but it also can work at the mitochondrial level, decreasing the production of free radicals. So what the GlyNAC people are suggesting is that there's this specific substance called glutathione that works in two ways: decreases the production of free radicals and works also as kind of an antioxidant. So that's kind of the basics. Now let's go real quick to the evidence, and then we're gonna move to the Q&A and answer your questions. And I'm gonna go ahead and just give a shout out to Kim Jackson, the powerhouse of the cell. That's what I was thinking about. I know that's what it's been taught on high schools.
So, Jesus, I'm going to interrupt before you get to that next slide and make a comment about glutathione. Glutathione is like the number one antioxidant. It's made by the body. And if you don't remember, antioxidants are the big thing in supplements. They've been the big thing for the past 30 or 40 years. And the body has a different way of accomplishing antioxidation or reduction. It uses methyl groups and it uses glutathione.
Thank you, Dr. Burr. Okay, let's move on to the science. And for those that are geeky like us, pardon if we don't go to the details and the statistical significance and all of that. We're trying to move on a little bit, but still want to give you evidence-based information. So I have 3 studies for you, the 3 landmark studies for GlyNAC. And GlyNAC basically is a mixture of glycine and N-acetylcysteine, which are basically precursors for glutathione. The idea is you take lysine and you take N-acetylcysteine and you're going to produce more glutathione to do that antioxidant activity that Dr. Brewer just described. So this is a randomized controlled trial. They compared healthy older adults versus older adults and see if in which group would you get increases on glutathione after supplementing with GlyNAC. So this is what they found out. It turns out that GlyNAC did not increase glutathione on healthy subjects, healthy adults, but it did on those who had oxidative stress. And the way they measured oxidative stress is those people who had an elevated number of a substance called malondialdehyde, which is basically a type of free radical or substance that comes from free radicals, if you want to see it that way. Basically, if you have oxidative stress, what this research is suggesting, GlyNAC can help. But if you're not dealing with oxidative stress, it might not. Next one, in this one, they tested if supplementation will improve mitochondrial function and insulin resistance in people with type 2 diabetes. So let me, if I'm able to click on this thing, let me show you the results for this second study. So this was a really short study, 4 days of supplementation at a dose of 100 milligrams per kilogram per day. They tested 10 subjects with type 2 diabetes. And this is what they found out. They saw improvement on mitochondrial fatty acid oxidation. They saw improvement on mitochondrial glucose oxidation. They saw improvement of the amount of free fatty acids and improved on the insulin resistance measured as HOMA-IR. They're basically saying we improved mitochondrial function. All of this is what it's saying. If you remember that I told you that when you burn glucose and the mitochondria gets overloaded with glucose, you start building free radicals. They said we improved the efficacy of mitochondria to burn glucose or other sources of energy to that fact. The key thing is, how do you think they measure this, Dr. Brewer?
That's what I was wondering.
Which part? The mitochondrial function?
Mitochondrial function.
Yes, as I've said multiple times, mitochondrial function is very, very difficult to measure. But there are a couple of things that they do. One is they measure a thing called ATP5, which is a biomarker of the electron transport that goes on within the mitochondria. Again, I think you already gave a geek alert, didn't you?
Well, I give you the clue, so that's on me.
So, also, PPAR alpha has some significance regarding, again, being a biomarker of mitochondrial function. There was another one, I'm blanking on the name. It's, gosh, can't remember, like something like MPG or something like that. So there are several different biomarkers. And when you look at some of the larger studies or some of the more recent studies on GlyNAC, they looked, at least one of them has looked pretty deep at PPAR alpha and some of the other biomarkers for that. You also can look at phosphorylation of fats and proteins. They give you a lot of information regarding that space, at least the best information that we can get. Again, I've done a couple of videos on it is really difficult to get a good handle on just what's going on with mitochondrial function.
Yep. And also other thing that they did is, I mean, they're gonna get a little bit beat up because of that, but they measured calorimetry, which is basically the heat produced by the mitochondria, also how much oxygen is being used versus how much oxygen remains, how much carbon dioxide is being produced, how many fuel substrates are left before the process starts. Basically, what we're trying to say is that this type of testing is not, I mean, I haven't seen it available for the overall population. This is something for in the setting of research, basically. So that's what they did.
I have a question about this. Mitochondrial membrane potential, is that what they would measure?
That's one thing that they can measure. Yeah.
They say they're using fluoroscopy technique with flow cytometry and fluorescence imaging. Have you ever heard of that?
Yes.
I have heard about fluoroscopy. You're a little bit more familiar with that process, Dr. Brewer?
I'm not that familiar with it, but I've seen it.
Okay.
So basically, the point we're trying to make over here is that there are efforts being done to improve measurement of mitochondrial function, and we know mitochondrial function is key. There's a lot of studies on using muscle biopsies to go to that point. It's still hard. And I'm seeing a couple of really interesting comments, and we're going to address some of those because they are providing some context also for the audience to understand why is this so difficult? Why aging is one of these things that we don't have all the answers yet to, but we're trying, and people are trying, and researchers are trying. So before we go any further, let me tell you something real sad. This is even sadder than we don't have the solution to measure mitochondrial function just yet. One of the saddest things that we have found on this channel so far is that 70% of our viewers are not subscribed. And if you ask somebody like Mr. Beast, Antonio, those popular YouTubers, they will say, well, subscribes don't matter that much. It matters the quality of your channel. We're trying to improve that. And if you think the quality of the channel is good enough, give us a subscribe. It really helps a lot for growing and for us so we can bring this information to more people. So if you're on that 70% of people who are not subscribed, just click on the subscribe button and click the notification bell. As a matter of fact,
yourself and you'll help others because more people will get this information. We'll be able to get more interesting folks coming on board, and we'll get it out to other people.
Yep. And you can click on the join button. That's optional for you if you want us to answer your questions sooner rather than later. Consider going the extra mile and joining. It's a couple of bucks a month, but that's not obligatory. I'm just trying to get you to subscribe, and that's it. As a matter of fact, if you don't subscribe, we're going to stop the stream right now. No, I'm just kidding. Let's go back. Let's go back. Last research.
Thank you, DD.
You got to remember.
Supplementing glycine and N-acetylcysteine, GlyNAC, in older adults improves glutathione deficiency, oxidative stress, mitochondrial dysfunction, inflammation, physical function, and aging hallmarks. If you see all of that in one sentence, you think, wow, this GlyNAC supplement looks like something I need to be taking, right? That's what this seems. Well, let's see the study. So this is a 16-week study, same dose, 100 milligrams per kilogram per day of GlyNAC, 24 subjects, ages 61 to 80. And what they're finding out is that they did improve a lot of these factors they were trying to measure: inflammation, endothelium function, insulin resistance, hallmarks of aging, waist circumference, and even blood pressure.
So let me interrupt here for a second. I've been waiting for a chance to make the point, get back up to 50,000 feet. You know, you hear this thing about insulin resistance, endothelial function, inflammation, oxidative metabolism, systolic blood pressure, waist circumference, aging. This is all what most of us have grown up thinking was, quote, normal aging. When you look at what Jeannie and Jesus and the team and I do when we're seeing patients, we're evaluating oxidative metabolism. We had Robert Lustig on a couple of months ago, and he talked about the different levels of metabolism. One is just the first level of energy balance mechanisms, and that's calories in, calories out.
Calories out.
Then he started talking about the carbohydrate insulin model. And yes, that's what's going on in terms of realizing that we're humans. Our food eating behavior is driven by our hormones, mostly insulin, but a bunch of insulin related hormones like insulin and ghrelin, et cetera. But then he talked about the third level, and that's what this is all about. That third level is that oxidative metabolism. Your blood pressure goes up, your waist circumference increases, your LDL increases, your insulin increases so you can't burn fat, so your triglycerides go up. And guess what? We are all comfortable with the fact that if we can't burn fat, in our middle ages, we start putting it on our hips, our belly. But what we don't realize, and what doctors don't realize either, is that this same metabolism starts impacting our blood pressure, the lining of our wall, the endothelial function, which you see in here. It also starts increasing our LDL. It starts decreasing our HDL. So that, again, is what this whole study is looking at. It's looking at oxidative metabolism. So thank you, Jesus.
Yeah, that's the third theory of obesity, right? That he mentioned on
the third mechanism. And then the fourth was obesogens in the environment.
Yeah. All right. So Gilbert, you took away my but I think actually Gilbert had some connection issues, Dr. Brewer. That's kind of what happened. I wanted to go a little bit into aging hallmarks or hallmarks of aging. I'm gonna spell out some weird words and things. I'll ask you to bear with me for a moment. Here are the hallmarks of aging, and we're not gonna go too deep into how they did measure that even. Genomic instability, telomere attrition, which is basically your telomeres, which are kind of the edges of your chromosomes, get shorter as you age. So they saw improvement on that even. Epigenetic alterations, loss of proteostasis, which is meaning that you are chewing a lot of proteins and decreasing the production of proteins, and basically GlyNAC supported that according to this research. Mitochondrial dysfunction we mentioned, cellular senescence, which is basically the death or the aging of the cell itself, and stem cell exhaustion. So basically you're producing less stem cells and you are not able to create new cells. So GlyNAC is arguing that they can help improve that. But let's go to the bottom line. Now that we have seen the 3 key papers that are supporting the research on GlyNAC, and there being enough to have a supplement on the market and arguing that it can improve aging. What do you think about that, Dr. Brewer, now that you have seen some of the evidence? And also, I know you did some background research as well on this.
So one thing I want to go back to, you mentioned epigenetics, you mentioned DNA. Yep, that's one of the other biomarkers that they look at as well. It's called phosphorylation of histones. Histones are proteins that the DNA wraps around in order for the body to be able to find. It's part of that librarian, the card. For those of us that are boomers, you remember the old card catalog? Histones and the methylation, are two of the key methods that our cells use to identify the correct DNA, the correct area, the correct gene within a DNA sequence. And they're actually measuring that too, histone phosphorylation. Now,
Absolutely.
I went down another bunny hole in terms of DNA and histones, but I forgot what your question was of me.
Well, what do you think of GlyNAC so far?
You know, when I just discovered this very, very recently, when you brought it up, you discovered it and made me aware of it. And I thought, oh boy, here we go. Yet another supplement claiming all kinds of stuff. And then I started looking at the research, and it was good. The evidence is striking. It really is. You know, you get things like, now one thing to remember as we go into this, you're in your 30s. So if I were you, I don't think I would start trying GlyNAC, and so is Jeannie, but I'm in my 60s. So
I'm not in my 30s, but I appreciate that. In the 50s.
and
so 50s would probably benefit from the GlyNAC, right? Especially
depends on your level of aging. What this is demonstrating for the younger folks really didn't have that much of an impact, or didn't appear to be. There's still gaps, and we'll go into that in just a minute. For the younger generations, or younger lab rats, younger humans, huge levels of glutathione in their tissues already. It's as we get older, we start really losing that glutathione. And one of the questions is, well, why don't we just supplement with glutathione? The body doesn't get to control the glutathione as well, and you need to have cellular control of the level of glutathione.
So do you see a population? I mean, like, what would be the indications you would think that someone would want to supplement? Would there be a measurement to draw first, or?
Well, if you're thinking that this stuff works, I don't think there's a specific. I think the only specific item would be your age, or your biological age.
Interesting.
Well, if you're familiar with Brian Johnson, he is not doing one supplement, but 50. And the goal from this guy is to live up to more than 120 years.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, his motto is don't die. And if you want to think about, well, I'm going to use GlyNAC to decrease my aging process and even reverse it, which I'll take the hit. Sorry for the clickbait. You know how YouTube is. But at the end, it's to give you a balanced opinion on this. We're not the experts on GlyNAC. We're seeing that from the point of view of some people who has been trained to look into research and see some of that stuff. I think it's on the similar position of most uppercomers in regards to supplements, where they're claiming to do something and they just need more time to prove they can do that. But at the end, it's all about money. They cannot research if they don't have money, and they need to start pushing something to sell it, make money, to keep doing research. And that's just the state of how things are on the supplements world right now. Most of the supplements we do know that they have some impact have been researched for years. And this research I showed you is like a couple of years old. So I will say there's a lot of promise on this one. It is. Can I say that if you take 100 milligrams per kilogram a day of GlyNAC, you're going to reverse your aging? I don't think I can say that.
Can I say that after reviewing it, I've decided to add it to my supplements? Yes.
Finally, a clear answer. So you are on the other side of the spectrum. You're saying that you're gonna add it to your supplements?
I am.
Wow. I thought you were gonna say, I'm gonna wait a little bit longer. Can you
You
elaborate
could.
on that?
If I were you, I'd wait a little bit longer, but you're not pushing 70.
Well, yeah, that's right. And I don't know. Might be the results of the research, or might be them knowing what their target audience is, because even the research is saying that this is better for people over 60 years old.
Oh, that's what they're saying. Okay.
So,
That's what
Jeannie,
the
you asked
research
me that a
says.
minute ago. I went down a bunny hole. You asked who would I recommend it for if you decided to take it? People over 60.
Okay.
Yeah.
And is there any way, are you going to draw any of the labs that you talked about to check the response or no?
I don't know how to get PPAR alpha and phosphorylated histones. I think those are research level indicators.
Well, you can get malondialdehyde, but I don't know how expensive that is. That's the other thing. This guy Brian Johnson is a billionaire, and he can spend all the bucks and all that stuff. Multiple experimental therapies, something that always down to earth folks might need to wait a little bit longer until that becomes more accessible. And that's the next part. I mean, you want to go over 120 years old. That's good. That involves investment too, in buying supplements and doing therapies and getting testing. The other day, I asked Dr. Brewer, hey, have you seen that in the research, there's a lot of TNF alpha measurements, which is a marker of inflammation. And we were like, well, yeah, but can you get that? Turns out you can. You can get that through Quest Labs. But guess how much does that test cost?
How much?
1,000.
Give me a number.
230.
Ginny?
1,000.
No, not that much. It's about $300.
Yeah.
So that's the question. It's a number that might give you some clues. It will tell you about your inflammation status. It's something that is being used on research. Will you spend $300 on that specific test? If you can spare $300 for that, yeah, why not? Same thing with GlyNAC. I probably should have done my homework on that. I don't know how much GlyNAC costs. If somebody's using it in the audience on the chat, please tell us how much you're paying for that.
I looked it up
how much
last
did you
night.
pay for it?
I'm sorry?
How much did you pay for yours?
Yeah, I looked it up last night and ordered some. It was like $30, and I don't know if it was a month's worth. I'll have to take a look. I was surprised that it wasn't more expensive, but I think the components are not that expensive. N-acetylcysteine we've had around forever. GlyNAC we've had around forever. So I think it's going to be hard to for a supplement maker to to really ramp up the margins on the profit margins on that.
Oh yeah, and the other side is if GlyNAC is not that. I mean, if you can buy them separately and they have the same effect compared to GlyNAC together, maybe considering that they're putting the magic powder on it and saying that their combination is better than taking them separately.
That's what you expect.
I'll give you another example. Arterosil and Endocalyx Pro, from which we have had a lot of requests, and again, I'll take the hit on that one. We haven't been able to cover that. They claim that they can improve the glycocalyx, the inner layer of the intima, all those proteins and grass-like layer that protects the intima layer of the arteries. They're the only supplements that I know that are claiming to do that. Dr. Brewer saw the research. I think you were impressed about the research again. But I think they're in a similar place like GlyNAC, where they need more time to test it on more population. Still, I know that Arterosil is kind of expensive, isn't it?
I think Arterosil is pretty expensive.
So there's and at the end, in regards to going back to aging, it's hard to find one thing that solves everything. They can help, but they're not necessarily the overall solution. Unfortunately, we are all looking for that pill that will resolve this problem. Before we move to Q&A, do you have any additional comments? Something that you want to bring up?
Did we cut off your last slide?
I have one slide to go. I was going to ask Gilbert. Gilbert, can you show the slides back again? Do you think you can do that? I see that Gilbert's back. Gilbert, for those who you know, he is our tech master over here. He's helping us sort all of those problems. Before we go to Q&A, Jeannie, would you like to give a shout out to our partner?
I would. We would like to thank our sponsor, the Hurdle socks. Right now, there's a promo code Hurdle B6 get 3, and you'll buy 6 get 3. They're really great socks. There's a type of almost an insole. Dr. Burr, I know you've worn them. What are your thoughts on them?
I approached those with some skepticism as well, and was pleasantly surprised. They're great socks. They not that my feet stink, but decrease odor, and they're very comfortable.
Yep.
I ended up wearing them like a sandal around the house.
Great. That's very good. Yeah, there's a little bit of compression, it seems, in there, and it says that it pushes the tissues away from, I guess, from the bony prominences in your feet. So it maybe reestablishes the way things feel. Does it feel good when you wear them?
It did. Good. I enjoyed them.
Good.
Well, thank you so much. They sponsored us on the last 2 conferences. I'm pretty sure they're going to sponsor us the next one. So support them if you are interested in getting some of those type of socks to improve tiredness in your feet. HurdleApparel.com. Get a promo code, buy 6, get 3 pairs for free. All right, let's move on to Q&A. So can we move on from the slide right there? All right, so let's go ahead and answer some questions. I'm just gonna, well, I was writing one of the answers, but let me go back here. Shout out to Kurt Becker, who just became a member. Didi became a member too. Cheryl Smith became a YouTube member. And for all of those who are wondering how they did that, just click on the join button next to the subscribe button. That way we can answer your questions first. If you're not a member, we're not going to answer your questions if we can't. Right now we have a little bit more time, so I'm positive that we might be able to get some non-member questions down here. So we appreciate your support, and remember to subscribe, click the notifications button, and share. Sharing is really important. If you think this is information that somebody needs to have, send it over. And if you think this is a good show that you can have somebody wasting 30 minutes of their life and you want to play a prank on them, go ahead and share it too. Doesn't matter the reason why you're doing that, just share it. So Kid Lawson, good morning all from Arizona. Thank you so much. Richard Militello, also from Arizona. Thank you so much. Kurt, here's your answer, Dr. Brewer. Easy. Stay on script. Quit repeating stuff you have said in multiple other times. This is not a Senate filibuster.
I saw that, Kurt, and it really hurt my feelings. And I hope you saw my response. Did you see my response, Jesus?
Oh, Dr. Brewer, let me see. On this show, it becomes clearly clear the majority of the viewers have missed the majority of the big picture, not to mention the details. So thank you so much for your patience. Yeah, we appreciate your patience. It's hard to kind of allocate information for everybody. Some people have done the research beforehand, so they're a little bit deeper into the topic. Some people are new to the topic and need to understand some of the basics. So we appreciate all of your patience, and we're trying to allocate as much as possible to everybody. It's a good question. Does ALA, alpha lipoic acid, stimulate glutathione? If so, is this effect significant enough? I don't know. I know that alpha lipoic acid has some anti-inflammatory effects. It has some lipid-lowering effects. I don't know about the effect of alpha lipoic acid on glutathione directly. That's a good question. I don't think we don't use alpha lipoic acid that much, though.
We don't, and I think we need to study it a little bit more. I think there's a little bit more to alpha lipoic acid than we've recognized.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think we can also recommend that for for some other stuff, especially people dealing with lipid issues. We're gonna look for that, Kurt, and see if alpha lipoic acid increases glutathione. Kit Lawson, please subscribe and help everyone with excellent programming, education, and information. Thank you so much, Kit. You might know, for those who have followed Dr. Brewer for years and are still here, we really appreciate your patience. And just so you know, we're making changes. We're kind of um, pulling the brakes a little bit, restructuring, talking about how to improve the show for you guys and to reach more people. So we're actively working on that. Tree Lady, maybe supplement industry is all wishful thinking. Visited my aunt in hospice and found she had a cabinet full of supplements at age 43. That's not rare at all. Right, Dr. Brewer?
Well, I've got a video where I actually showed my own garbage bags full of supplements in my supplement cabinet. So, yeah, I know and understand that. And it's interesting because I came from a position where, again, started off as early on as an ER doc, then got into this, ended up as faculty at Hopkins, did well, very successful in the space, and ignored supplements. I thought supplements were really just expensive urine for 30 years or so. And the past 5 to 10 years have really started looking a lot deeper into supplements. And there's real information there, or real benefit from a lot of them. Here's the problem, though. So many times it's like the 6 blind men and the elephant. They all disagree, but when you look at where they're coming from, each one individually was correct. And I think here's where Tree Lady's right. Yes, if her 83-year-old aunt didn't maintain her BMI, wasn't doing HIIT training, wasn't doing wasn't monitoring her blood sugars on a regular basis and keeping them below 140, then 2 or 3 garbage bags full of supplements are not going to help reverse that. We're talking, you cannot supplement your way out of a lifestyle issue. And so often there's huge demand for supplements. And one of the reasons is people feel like it's the easy button. They help, but they're not going to overcome a lifestyle problem.
Absolutely right. And people will wonder, well, then why are you talking about supplements on your channel if all of this is lifestyle? Well, information comes in different sources and different ways. It's for you to have another perspective on if you need to take that supplement or not. And we're not we're not extremists in any of those. We're not saying that lifestyle alone will do everything. We're not saying that supplements are the solution. Unfortunately, there's always a balanced view. And something that Dr. Brewer gets beat up all the time is because the answer for everything that we ask him all the time is, it depends. It always depends. Gets me frustrated, but he's right. What can you do about that?
While you're there, Jesus, there was somebody, I'm looking for it. I can't find it now, but someone asked the question. They said, well, if I am managing my lifestyle, do I need to take GlyNAC? I'm managing my lifestyle very, very well. And given what I've seen on the evidence so far, I'm planning on adding GlyNAC because, yes, you can do a lot of stuff. So I'm diabetic, technically. Most people would not have diagnosed me, but I'm very sensitive and focused on metabolic issues. So I'm able to find it where others wouldn't. And I'm doing a whole lot of stuff to manage my lifestyle, but I suspect that I can get benefit from something like GlyNAC, assuming the evidence that we're seeing continues to pan out in the direction that it started.
There you go. Joey T, Dr. Gundry promotes urolithin A for slowing aging by mitochondrial health. How does urolithin A compare to GlyNAC? Should I take both? Can you take too much antioxidants? There's a bunch of questions over there. I know just a little bit about urolithin. I will be interested to doing a deeper research, just like we did with GlyNAC. He's a postbiotic, which it's basically digested substances that will improve the gut health and the environment of the biome in the guts. And it claims that it improves mitochondrial function. I don't know how strong the evidence is for that one. If you know Dr. Gundry, he also gets beat up a lot. Do you want to say your perspective on Dr. Gundry? I have my own, but
it's interesting. I think there's a larger than life ego there, and that just creates a target. A lot of people want to target that. The other thing is that he talks about a bunch of stuff that appeals to folks that are not geeks. We've got tons and tons of geeks on our channel, so you can get beat up for that reason. On the other hand, you dig into his stuff and you'll find these little nuggets sometimes that I think are worthwhile. For example, glutens, gliadins, the other lectins in plants. I think that the standard medical manpower is woefully, inadequately unaware of the impact of lectins in our diet.
And I think, just like you say, Dr. Brewer, we do agree with everybody on some things, and we can say that we even disagree with everybody on some things. I think from what I've seen from Dr. Gundry so far, he is a really good businessman.
Yes.
There's no doubt about that.
No question.
He's a real businessman.
Better than us.
He is. And he has really some good points. But also there are some statements that I'm like, if you're familiar with Dr. Mike, he's a really popular doctor, family medicine doctor. He's more of a mainstream doctor, so he's all about guidelines and all of that. So many of folks that work in the channel might not like him. He had Dr. Gundry on his show. Dr. Gundry was they gave him a chance. They gave him an honest fight to Dr. Gundry, but he was defending smoking. And it's like, it's hard to defend the smoking. It's hard to say that smoking is healthy. Gundry.
I forgot about that. It's like, how can you do that? Come on.
So something that he's doing really good that we're not doing is that he's promoting gut health. And that's really important.
Yes.
I agree on a lot of that stuff. I don't agree with smoking though. But I'm not familiar with Urolithin A. I will have to we need to do some more research on that and see how that compares to GlyNAC, basically, to answer your question. Richard Midatello, Arturosil is about $100 per month. Thank you for letting us know. Is that expensive? I think it depends, right, on everyone's budget. Kurt Becker, little safety downside to GlyNAC. So if 60 plus, better to start taking it now rather than find out years later from the research that finally showed that you should have started taking years ago. That's Dr. Brewer's point. Yeah. I understand that. I talked from the perspective of a 30-year-old. And yeah, that's important to notice. We didn't mention that. Didn't see any safety issues with GlyNAC compared to what you saw with NR, nicotinamide riboside,
right,
which resulted to increase the risk of triple negative breast cancer. Mm-hmm. So, and a lot of people were taking NR for the same reasons that GlyNAC is trying to get into the market. All right. So I take that awkward pause as a sign for me to follow up. Bill Kearney, is it equivalent to get glycine from another beneficial component like magnesium glycinate and TMG? That's a really good question. I'm a fan of TMG. I think betaine or TMG is a really good supplement as well. I haven't seen research regarding TMG or magnesium glycinate into mitochondrial function. I think I saw 1 or 2 papers on magnesium glycinate, not on TMG. But what do you think, Dr. Brewer?
I'm glad you asked. I was about to interrupt. So, we talked earlier about glutathione being like the major oxidation reducer. I'm going to get into my oxidation theme. And who was it? Was it somebody, we talked about it, said, Kurt, stay on script, quit repeating stuff you'd said other times. Kurt, close your ears, or you may want to go somewhere else. But I'm going to repeat something because most people have not heard it, and it's how the body reacts and deals with oxidation. This oxidation that's driven by our diabetic/aging metabolism. And I'm going to go down, make a quick nod to a bunny hole. Jesus said he's in his 30s, so he's not worried about it. But Jesus has also admitted on the channel that he's probably getting an early entry into this diabetic, pre-diabetic world. So he can describe that and how that fits with this in just a minute. But there's another way that the human body deals with oxidation besides glutathione. It's methylation. So oxidation has a couple of other names. Boy Scouts would call it fire. Your local mechanic would call it rust. It's combining oxygen with something. And in chemistry class, you reverse that by adding hydrogen. And so what happens when you add hydrogen to oxygen? It forms water. So you go from fire and inflammation to neutralization with water. The human body doesn't do that. The human body uses methyl groups. And I'm not going to get geeky. I'm not going to go down that next geeky organic chemistry step to show how methyl groups are basically equivalent to hydrogen, but the body uses methyl groups. The reason I went down here is because of another area that many people have heard of. MTHFR, methylene tetrahydrofolate reductase. Why is that an issue? Because over half of us do not methylate appropriately, as well as the other, 40%. And it's because we have genetic variations in MTHFR. So if you've heard of methylation and you think, for example, Z-Dog he's another physician content creator on YouTube, and he said, yes, MTHFR does exist, but it's totally inconsequential. Well, it is in his world. He's an intensivist. He works in the ICU. The lifespan for somebody in an ICU can be measured from hours and minutes up to weeks at most, maybe months. And yes, when you're looking at lifespan on hours and days, MTHFR and methylation doesn't matter. But when you're looking at it in terms of decades, like we do, MTHFR does matter. And the reason, why did I go down that bunny hole? Because of the methyl groups on trimethylglycinate. So Jesus and a couple of others have mentioned how they're such big fans of TMG. It's also called betaine. So you've got two things. Number one, 3 methyl groups and a glycine. The methyl groups can go back and help the B complex vitamins improve and increase that store. So folks like me who are poor methylators have the methyl groups that we need to fight that oxidative metabolism that we have with diabetes. Glycine, on the other hand, as we're talking and studying today, glycine may actually be helpful for our bodies for improving the other major solution to this, the other major cleanup crew, and that is glutathione. So again, thank you for your patience, Kurt.
I was wondering when you were going to go to the methylation bunny hole.
You knew I was headed there, didn't you?
I did. Well, sometimes it's necessary. We have a couple of videos on methylation too. We might get rid of those, Dr. Brewer, with the new YouTube programming ideas, but we'll talk about it.
We'll see.
Joey T, can autophagy from fasting reduce a small dense LDL? The only thing that I have seen that will reduce a small dense LDL is alternate day fasting. That's on research, but on paper, I think it depends. I think some people will reach autophagy and will have a decrease on their LDL. And anytime you decrease your LDL, you're very likely to decrease a small dense LDL. But some people don't see a significant change on the LDL after fasting, or I'm thinking prolonged fasting. Any one of you guys have an idea on that one question?
I saw a patient yesterday who had lost like 90 pounds. His LDL plummeted, along his HDL large improved, his LDL A pattern. He developed an A pattern from a B pattern. His peak went up. So what we're talking about is the impact of lifestyle on this issue, the effect of lifestyle on oxidative metabolism and health as measured by biomarkers, fractionation. So what was very interesting about this patient was he went to Europe, took a little bit of time off from his improvement in his lifestyle, and his LDL went back up from like 50 to like 110. Very, very interesting. And people say, oh, I don't worry about my LDL. Whether LDL is the driver or not, I don't think it's the driver, but LDL is a very, very potent biomarker for lifestyle and oxidative metabolism.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Burr. And I wanted to go back to the last question. I realized we didn't answer one thing, which is, can you take too much antioxidants? I think depending on the antioxidant you take, some people can develop some micronutrient deficiencies. But I haven't seen anybody dealing with significant problems because of too much antioxidants. Have you?
No, I think that's where you get back to expensive urine.
Yeah. Yep. And I had one question right here. So this is Kurt. Thank you for staying here with us, Kurt. He's answering to another viewer, and Sudata Ray, who is mentioning that R-lipoic, I think he's referring to R-lipoic acid, is better than GlyNAC. I haven't seen the research on R-lipoic acid. There are like, how many supplements do you think there are out there on the market? And all of those are promising miracles to people.
More than I
How many? Thousands of them.
And we only have too much time on YouTube, so I'm adding alpha lipoic acid to talk a little bit more about that, which we're aware of.
But you're taking
acid,
away methylation.
Well, just for my personal research, Dr. Brewer, and I will let you know. So you're not getting embarrassed on YouTube because you don't know one supplement out of 1,000. I'm trying to help you.
That's hard. It's hard to help me, isn't it?
It is. And well, we still have like 8 minutes. Let's answer some non-members questions. And remember, if you want to become a member, just click the join button. And if you enjoyed the show so far and you have made it onto the 52-minute mark already, consider subscribing. I can promise you can find a lot of good stuff already on the channel, but you can also find really good stuff that we have on the oven cooking for you. Sugar-free. I have used GlyNAC for years. It doesn't seem to reverse aging. Well, there you have it. There's some experiences right there already. I still have gray hair. My cholesterol actually went up, but it's also not all bad. On days when I don't have good sleep or I'm under stress, I have used it. It's good for jet lag. Interesting. Thank you, Lucian. Lucian just became a YouTube member. Thank you so much. So let me tell you this. You like this bunny hole, Dr. Brewer. John Ioannidis. I always misspell his last name.
It's a hard name to spell. It's hard to pronounce. It's Ioannidis.
Well,
it's Greek.
He said he wrote an article on the Public Library of Science saying, did he say all or did he say must? Research findings are wrong.
No, he said most.
So the thing is, what can you believe in, right? Us trained by as scientists and looking at research, that's what we can use as evidence-based. And there are different levels of evidence-based. And I always tease Dr. Burron telling him that the expert opinion is the last one. And you use the expert opinion when there's nothing else. There are not randomized controlled trials, meta-analysis, cohort studies, blah, 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 you name it. And even those can be published and have significant flaws that we dissect one of those last week with Nick Norwitz and Adrian Soto on a study that was published, and the results were not necessarily truth. However, what can you put your trust in? evidence-based research or just experiences. And I think if you go to either one of those sides completely, you're going to be in danger of making a mistake. If you're only trusting on experiences, that might be right, might be wrong. If you're putting some evidence-based back on it, I think it will increase your chances of being right, if that makes any sense. Also, a shout out to Millie
Makes sense to
Culligan,
me.
who just became a YouTube member. Thank you so much. Let's go to another non-member question. Well, JMK is basically a member, but she doesn't want to spend the extra bucks, and we acknowledge that. That's okay. She has even sent us emails. I wrote the email on the chat box, info@prevmedhealth.com. If you have any research, anything that you want to share with us, go ahead and send us an email. We'll be happy to take a look at some research and expand our horizons. We'll learn a lot from our audience and our patients. JMK2921, do we really need any GlyNAC if you have optimal metabolic health? I think you tiptoed into that one, Dr. Brewer.
Yeah, that was the one I mentioned.
Yeah. Basically, you said basically no, basically yes, or it depends, as usual.
No, I don't. It's sort of like saying, well, I don't think I can think of a good analogy. They're two different things. Lifestyle is one thing, and our ability for our cells to generate glutathione is a different issue. That's just an aging issue.
That wasn't clear to me, Dr. Brewer.
Oh, well.
Should you take GlyNAC years or not?
let me put it this way.
I'm just teasing you.
Are they the same? The answer is no. If you're managing your lifestyle, would you need the kind of supplementation if this is available and it works? The answer is yes.
Thank you.
Even if
that's more.
Go ahead.
Even if what?
I started to say, especially if you're in your 60s and 70s. You don't need it if you're in your 30s.
And you're starting to talk me out of my perspective, because as you mentioned, I do have pre-diabetes. I haven't measured my mitochondrial function. I don't think I have something to do that near me. My homocysteine levels are not high, so that can mean either my mitochondria is not that bad, or I don't have the MTHFR gene. Going back to methylation. However, I do have significant pre-diabetes. Yeah.
So saying that though, then if someone is a poor methylator, would it not be beneficial for that group if you can identify it as when they're younger, even when they benefit from it?
I think both of you are starting to think the same way I'm thinking. These are different issues. One is preventing the problem. That's the lifestyle issues. Another is how to clean up the problem. Yeah. And there's two mechanisms for that. One is the methyl groups, which Jeannie just mentioned. The other is glutathione, which this is about.
Okay.
Thank you. As you brought up, Jesus, recognizing prediabetes type metabolism in your 30s is extremely disappointing, but it's a heck of a lot better than finding it when you were in your 60s and it really started in your 30s. You've got 30 years of damage to deal with and to try to clean up.
Well, let me tell you, that's something that can be frustrating, because I already was a preventive medicine doctor before I met Dr. Brewer. To me, the last 2 years, a little more than 2 years, have been intensive training. And you guys who have seen the show since the first time I went here and start talking my broken English to you on camera, you can realize that this is a training session for me as well. And it's really sad that I needed to work with one of the best preventive medicines in the world to identify that I had prediabetes, me being a specialist on the field. So that's what we want to avoid happening to most folks. And you can share this with your youngest family, because the earlier you get this, the more resources you're going to have to deal with this.
Well, even at our conference, we had a group of 30s and 40s last time, and they were really grateful, for getting the information young, which that's a great group to be getting the information.
Oh, yeah.
Well, we're hitting the 1 hour mark. I promised something. Last question, Lucian P. I use Eurolytin A for mitochondria, and it works better than GlyNAC. So here you have one experience. Thank you so much, Lucian P. She or he has tried both, and Eurolytin A has seemed to show better benefits than GlyNAC. So it depends. Always depends. Before we go, I'm going to give you a teaser for those who made it to the end. This is for you guys because you made it to the end. We have two guests this month that you don't want to miss out, Dr. Saives and Dr. Boss. So stay tuned, subscribe, share, hit the like button. Dr. Brewer, closing remarks before we leave.
So if you haven't met Dr. Cyves, it's Cyws. He's on YouTube as the carb addiction doctor. And he's got a very interesting story. We're going to be meeting with him today to see if we can tease that story out a little bit more in terms of he was a rugby player and he was all into the whole thing about rugby with the athletics, fueling up, the strength training. And then a big deal was going to the pub for an hour or two afterwards and drinking way too much beer. He gained 100 pounds. And that created his introduction to the metabolism that we're talking about. So we're going to be looking for that story. With Dr. Baez, she just got back from Egypt. She did a low carb vacation and event there. And I've reread a couple of her books and cannot say how practical her advice is in terms of getting a keto metabolism, getting the sugar out of your metabolism, going from sugar burning to fat burning, and how that can help you get into prolonged fasting. I learned something about electrolytes and especially magnesium from her experiences and her content on fasting. I'm going to be pushing, if you're interested more in GlyNAC, Jesus will probably beat me up for this, but I'm going to refer you to another video, another content creator. He goes by Physionic.
Oh yeah, no, I love Physionic. That's a really good channel.
It's Nicholas. What is his last name?
I don't remember his last name.
But
I love the channel. I don't get involved into the persona that much.
He's a doctoral candidate in molecular medicine, and so all these different folks represent different parts of my life too. I'd love to geek out on Nicholas Physionic's molecular medicine, but you know what? I get geared up on that, and then I have another half day of patients where it's actually seeing patients and dealing with real life issues, just like Dr. Boz does. So it gets a lot more practical as a doc. And so there are many parts of our life and what we're doing that I enjoy. And I'm excited about bringing on some folks that really dive deep into different areas.
So Nicholas Verhoeven.
I don't know if that's German or Amsterdamian or Danish.
He has a really good channel, and I'm gonna. We mentioned that I'm gonna try to contact him and see if we can get him on the show. We're trying to do that as well. You have realized on this year we're trying to get more people on the show. Dr. Brewer, you're gonna make us go to 120, and then nobody's gonna click on this video, so we need to move on. Well, it always is.
It always is. That's your job for it to be your fault.
Exactly right. So, guys, thank you so much for your patience. I hope you enjoyed the show. We'll see you next week.